Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope that you're doing well. If you're new here, a very warm welcome. My name is Emily and this channel is all about life abroad, living in Canada, living as an expat and other travel related things. So if you are into that kind of content, please don't forget to check out my channel and subscribe if you want to. In case you're wondering, I'm wearing a top that I would not usually wear because I don't usually care about football or sports in general, but today is a very special day, and for those of you who are not aware, if you're not British or Italian, today is the Euros final, and it's the first time that England have ever got into the Euros final, I believe, and it's the first final that they've ever been in since they won the World Cup in the 60s. I have very limited football knowledge, but I feel like it was very appropriate today to wear this. It's the only England shirt that I own. It's like well, actually it's Mike's. I bought this for him so he could have it, and I've stole it from him for the weekend. So this is like an old Euros top from 2016. So yeah, if you're wondering why I'm wearing it today, that's why. But onto the video, which is nothing to do with football. This is a highly requested video. I think ever since I started doing YouTube, people have asked me to do this. It's just taken me a while to research and kind of check against other sources to bring it all together, but today's video is all about comparing the cost of living in England and Canada. So I've decided to do it a couple of different ways. I'm going to do England and Canada as a whole, then I'm going to do the two most expensive cities in both countries, so London and Vancouver. Toronto and Vancouver are very similar, but I think Vancouver is just marginally more expensive than Toronto, so I felt that was fair. And then I'm also going to do one that I'm most familiar with. So when I was living in the UK, I lived in Yorkshire, and now I live in Victoria. So I'm going to do a comparison between Leeds and Victoria. I feel like they're very comparable cities. Probably, well, Leeds or maybe York, but I'm going to stick with Leeds because Leeds is what I know the most. So I'm going to do the three comparisons. I actually haven't looked at this. I have some ideas about which is more expensive, but I don't know for certain. So some things off the top of my head which I think are going to be more expensive in Canada are groceries for sure. I think the price of petrol is going to be cheaper in Canada. In regards to rent, I think it's going to differ between the cities. For example, I think London is going to be way more expensive than Vancouver, even though Vancouver is really expensive. Another thing I think is going to be more expensive in Canada is phone contracts. For some reason, phone contracts are so expensive here, especially if you're getting data. Everything else I'm really not sure about, utilities and things like that. I know that in the UK you have your council tax, which is super expensive, so even though rent could be cheaper, I think the council tax probably brings it closer together. I'm not sure. I think that perhaps your bills are going to be cheaper in Canada. I've said this before, but I think like heat, water and electricity is somewhat cheaper here than it is in the UK. So yeah, there are just a couple of my thoughts like from living in both places, but I'm definitely interested to do the research and find out. So I'm gonna go on my laptop now and compare the places. Okay, so the first comparison I'm going to do is between the United Kingdom and Canada as a whole. Obviously this is going to be an average price, and there are so many different places in Canada and in the UK that are so different in cost of living, so this is obviously not going to be very accurate, but just to start us off, I thought that would be a fun idea to do that. And if any of you are interested in comparing between the two countries or between different cities, I just did my own research. I looked at rental websites, I looked at phone contract websites, I looked at grocery store websites, things like that, but there are multiple websites that you can go on which will compare different cities. So I'm pretty sure if you just Google Victoria versus Leeds house comparisons or cost of living comparisons, you will be able to find it, but I'm just going to condense it all into this video. So if you don't want to do your own research, I can help you out. Obviously this is not going to be accurate for everybody. This is just based on what I have seen. This is not advice in any way. So just to give you, I guess, an idea based on someone who has been in both places and also has done a little bit of research into it. Just disclaimer on that front. Okay, so this is very interesting. So as I thought, rent prices in Canada are higher than in the United Kingdom. There's no surprise there, but as you said, in the United Kingdom you do have your council tax, So I feel like, I'm not sure if this kind of has the rent and the council tax included in both. I don't think so, but I know that with council tax, depending on how much you pay in your area, it is going to affect that. So this is actually another one that I thought would be cheaper here, and that's restaurant prices. For some reason, I think that eating out in North America in general is a lot cheaper than in Europe. I think people do it more often, and there's just a lot more places to go, I feel like. So I thought that was going to be one, and it is true. So the restaurant prices in Canada are lower than in the United Kingdom on average. Oh my gosh, grocery prices. So this is one that I was like, yeah, Canada's definitely more expensive. I didn't realize how much more expensive, but now I'm looking at it, I shouldn't be shocked, but I feel like I am. So grocery prices in Canada are on average 20% higher than in the United Kingdom. That's wild. That's so wild. So that's the thing, you know, that's such a big part of cost of living too, is groceries. And especially if you have specific diets, if you're, for example, a vegan, or if you can only eat gluten-free products, or you can't eat dairy, obviously things are going to differ too. I feel like I got used to the grocery store prices here, but definitely that was the biggest shock, because I feel like in the UK you have so many, you know, big supermarkets, and it's not necessarily a good thing for everybody that the prices are cheaper in the UK, because you don't know why they're cheaper or how they're cheaper. But, you know, in the UK, there's the big four supermarkets that are always kind of like in battle with each other, who can get the cheapest prices. So I feel like that's probably why the prices are cheaper in the UK. I don't know, but that's my wild guess. Whereas in Canada, we don't really have that same competition. You know, you have like a grocery store here and there, but there's usually like one type of grocery store that dominates specific areas. So for example, here on Vancouver Island, Thrifty Foods is really, really big, and there's not that many other places that you can go. From what I've experienced, obviously in different parts of the island it's going to be different, but in this particular area in Victoria, Thrifty Foods is pretty big. There's a couple of other stores too, but they're not like massive competitions. And one thing that I found in Canada is if it's one price in one store, generally it's going to be the same price in every store. It's the same with sales as well, actually. Like, I feel like in the UK, you're always kind of like trying to find who's got the best sale or who has it at the cheapest price. In Canada, it's a lot more regulated. If you see it at a price in one store, usually it's almost definitely going to be the same price in another store. And if one store has a sale on something, another store will probably have the same or a very, very similar sale. I feel like it's less stressful that way, but again, there's not that competition like there is in the UK, so there is not that fight to get the lowest price, which I imagine not just with groceries, but other things in general, cameras, electronics, clothes, things like that. The prices are just a lot more similar across all of the different stores. So here is some examples of like typical things that you would purchase in the UK compared to Canada. And again, these are just average prices. So for example, milk, a 1 litre milk carton. I don't drink milk. Does it come in a carton now? I don't remember. I remember having it when I was a kid in the UK, and it came in glass bottles, but in Canada they have it in bags, but that's a whole different other story, and it's kind of weird. So a 1 litre carton, we'll go with carton of milk. In the UK on average, it's about 91 pence. 91 pence. That sounds so weird for me to say now. 91p. Whereas in Canada, it's $2.46 Canadian, which is about £1.42. So it's like 50% more in Canada than it is in the UK for milk. The same it seems with bread. So in the United Kingdom, a typical fresh white loaf of bread, about 500 grams, costs about 98p. And in Canada, it's $2.94, and that's about £1.70. So that's about 75% more, which is just crazy. Again, I'm not surprised, but it's still crazy how much more expensive it is here. It seems like that's the same across a lot of the different groceries too. So, you know, your fresh foods and things like that. For some reason, it seems that bananas are cheaper here. I always thought bananas were really cheap in the UK, but apparently bananas are the one thing that's cheaper in Canada. Everything else is like 40% higher in Canada, 47%, 55, 100, whoa, what's that one? Oh my gosh. So lettuce, I forgot how cheap lettuce is in the UK. So lettuce on average in the UK is 72 pence, and in Canada it's $2.57, which is about $1.48 UK. So that's about 100% more. Well, it's just over 100% more. That's wild for lettuce. You gotta love lettuce. Actually, I shouldn't be surprised at that, because when we buy salad leaves like spinach and things like that, and we always buy organic spinach. It's just one of the things that we do, always buy organic. But for like a box of spinach, it's about $8, which I think everyone in the UK is like, what? I know, I'm so normalized to this now, it's craziness. So going on to transportation seems to be significantly cheaper in Canada. I feel like I am surprised at that, because I feel like although subways and streetcars and things like that, especially in Toronto, felt cheaper, taxis were more expensive, I felt, but apparently it's not. According to this, taxis are cheaper here, and I guess that is because of gas prices too. Okay, so utilities, United Kingdom versus Canada. This was very hard to research because I have completely forgotten the things that I paid for in the United Kingdom. I don't exactly have my like bills to hand, so I couldn't compare this very well, so I had to kind of rely on what the internet told me. But from what I have researched, the average basic electricity, heating, cooling, water, garbage, things like that, is about £155 in the UK, which I feel like I did not realise it was that expensive. For some reason I thought it was much cheaper, but again, maybe that's just because I'm living in Canada. Whereas in Canada, it's 164 Canadian dollars, around that price. So that's only about £95. So that's 40%-ish cheaper in Canada than it is in the UK. So on average, the rent prices in Canada compared to the UK are more expensive, not surprising. Obviously, again, this differs from city to city and area to area, but on average, the two countries, in the United Kingdom, the average one-bedroom apartment in the city centre is about £750 a month. Whereas in Canada, it's 1,335 Canadian dollars, which is about £770. So it's not that much cheaper. It's about 3% cheaper, but it's still a little bit cheaper in Canada. I guess as well, comparing cost of living salaries is really important, because if there is one thing that I've found, I think that the salaries definitely match the cost of living wherever you are. Like when you're in Toronto, salaries and Vancouver, salaries are more than they would be in countryside places. But on average, the salaries after tax in Canada are a little bit more than in the UK, which I am not surprised at, but it's not too much. It's about 4%. So the average UK net salary is about £1,950 a month, and then in Canada it's about 3,500 Canadian, which is about £2,000 pounds a month. Not a lot at all, but it does make a slight difference, especially when you kind of factor into the cost of living. Okay, so that was on a whole. I'm gonna whiz through the other two. I probably won't go into too much detail unless I see anything crazy. But the next one I'm gonna do is the two most expensive cities in the country, and I'll probably give you some like average prices because I feel like that will help. So we're gonna do a comparison between London, UK, and Vancouver, British Columbia. And as I thought, it is cheaper overall to live in Vancouver than it is in London, which may come as a surprise to many Canadians because Vancouver is known as being ridiculously overpriced, but a lot of these Canadians have never either visited London or tried to live in London, and all you Brits are probably not surprised to learn that London is far more expensive. Not surprising, but it really makes you realise just how expensive London is to live. Oh my goodness. And that is why I've never lived in London. Restaurant prices in Vancouver are about 20% lower than in London too. Not surprising. As I said, I feel like restaurant prices are cheaper here, but also the types of restaurants are very, very different. I feel like in the UK you get a lot more fine dining. There's a lot more Michelin star restaurants, especially in London, so that is not surprising. There's just not that kind of scene, or not as much of that kind of scene in Vancouver. So I'm not surprised that it is cheaper in Vancouver. So they are about 12% more expensive in Vancouver than they are in London. Again, I don't feel like I am surprised. Even in London, it's still expensive to buy groceries in the city, but it's still way cheaper, or not way cheaper, but significant amount cheaper than in Canada. I won't go through like restaurant meals specifically, or milk and things like that, because I feel like grocery prices massively change across cities in either countries. The only things I will say is in the UK and in Canada too, certain grocery stores are more expensive, but especially in the UK, like it's going to differ massively if you go to Aldi or if you go to Marks and Spencer's or Waitrose. Like those two places differ hugely in grocery prices. In Canada, you don't get that as much. There are some cheaper grocery stores like No Frills in comparison to Sobeys, but it's not as different, I feel like, as it is in the UK. So they are very similar, and on average quite similar. So transportation costs seem to be a lot cheaper in Vancouver than in London. I'm kind of surprised at that. For some reason, I didn't feel like the transportation costs in London were that expensive. Just shows how long it's been since I've been there. I guess it's changed maybe, or I've just become strangely familiar with the way that it's priced here. I think also because of the exchange rate, obviously that changes, so the cost of living comparisons will change. And I think because in Canada, the Canadian dollar is not as strong as the British pound, when you see bigger numbers, you're automatically like, oh, this is really expensive. Like when I first came from the UK, your brain is still adjusting to being like, this is $1, not a pound. So you would see something like, oh my gosh, $5 for whatever, and it takes a while for you to realize it's not £5. So I feel like I've always been like, Canada is so expensive, when in reality you have to kind of apply the exchange rate. So going on to transportation, because I think this is a really interesting one. In London, your monthly transport pass on average is about £155, which is insane. In Vancouver, it's about 100 Canadian dollars, which is about just under £60. So it is significantly cheaper to travel in Vancouver than in London. So basic utilities are much cheaper in Vancouver. This is craziness to me. On average, your monthly utilities in London are about £172. In Vancouver, they're about 85 to 90 Canadian, which is like £50. That is so different. That is absolutely wild to me. I'm very shocked at that. So rent, this is going to be really interesting, because this is the thing that I feel like both cities go on about. People that live in Vancouver and people that don't always complain about how expensive the rent is in Vancouver. But the same in London, and as I said, I'm not surprised that London is still way more expensive in Vancouver. But like when I see these prices for like an average 1-bedroom, it's wild. I can't even fathom it. So for an average 1-bedroom apartment in the city centre in London, it averages at £1,660, which is, for my Canadian friends, about $2,900 for 1 bedroom. Oh my goodness, that's insane. And that's average. Whereas in Vancouver, the average apartment, 1-bedroom in a city centre, is about 2,000 Canadian dollars. I feel like it's more expensive than that, but apparently according to this average, it's about 2,000, which is about £1,170. Again, this is average price, so still, I mean, they're both very expensive, but London is so much more expensive. That is just, that's insane. Okay, so our final one, we're gonna go a little bit less crazy than London and Vancouver, because any big city, capital city like that is gonna be expensive, but oh my goodness, I forgot how expensive London was. That kind of freaks me out a little bit. Okay, so finally we're gonna go on to Leeds, United Kingdom, and Victoria, British Columbia. And this is gonna be an interesting one because I have my ideas what it's gonna be like, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so for rent prices, I am not shocked. Victoria is still very expensive. It's not quite at the level of Vancouver and Toronto, but it is still very expensive. And now I'm like, is this really a fair comparison? But I feel like the kind of lifestyle and the size of the city in Victoria and Leeds, I feel like are comparable. So I feel like people that would live in Victoria would live in Leeds and vice versa. So that's why I decided to compare these two, and also because they're the most familiar cities to me. But the rent prices in Victoria are around 45% higher than in Leeds. That's crazy. That's crazy. The average price as well, but that's insane. And the grocery prices are about 35% higher in Victoria than they are in Leeds, but the restaurant prices are only 3 or 4% lower than in Leeds. That's, I guess, yeah, Leeds isn't that expensive to eat out in. I am so out of touch with UK living, that's just insane. So again, I feel like the grocery prices are going to be very similar across the board, so I'm not going to go through those ones, but I will do transportation. So for transportation, for your monthly pass, on average in Leeds, it's about £61, whereas in Victoria, it's about 85 Canadian dollars, which is about £50. So it's still cheaper in Victoria. So for utilities, it's also cheaper in Victoria. Again, that doesn't really come as a surprise considering what we've seen in other places. Leeds, your average basic monthly utilities come in at around £130, whereas in Victoria, it comes in about 100 Canadian dollars, which is about 55, 56 pounds UK. For rent, the thing that everyone's been waiting for. So for a 1-bedroom apartment in the city centre in Leeds, oh my gosh, is it really that different? So for a 1-bedroom apartment in the city centre in Leeds, it's about £720, according to this website. In Victoria, the same thing is about 1,650 Canadian dollars, which is about 960, 970 pounds. That is so much more expensive. And they're very like comparable cities too. Victoria's on an island, which makes everything more expensive, but like that's crazy. Again though, you've got to think about council tax, because I know that it's a big factor for a lot of people, so we don't have that. In Leeds you do. And so for your monthly salaries, again, Victoria is you get slightly more for your, well, slightly, it's about 20% more salary on average than you would in Leeds. Again, I feel like that is fair because it kind of reflects the cost of living a bit more. So in Leeds, the average monthly salary is about £1,900 a month. And then in Victoria, the average is about 4,000 or just under 4,000 Canadian dollars, which is about £2,300. So it's about 20% more in Victoria than it is in Leeds. But again, I think that makes up for how much more expensive it is for rent and groceries. But again, you know, Leeds bills are more expensive and your council tax is more expensive and other things, restaurants, slightly more expensive in Leeds. I feel like I'm not super shocked at all of them. I am shocked at some of the prices though. Like I think that I've just grown very used to the prices in Canada, and to see how much more expensive some things in Canada are than they are in the UK and vice versa, it's kind of wild because the countries are very comparable. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you found it useful. If you did, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. I post videos every single week. Sometimes they're like this, other times they're vlogs. So if you're into that kind of content, check out my channel, see if you like it, and subscribe. That would be awesome. Until my next video, I hope you have the most wonderful day, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye.